Hi everyone, today I'll be speaking about Alberti bass and short arpeggio. So basically I'll be speaking about accompaniment like that one, or this one, when you have basically just a broken chord rolling through and looped. There are a few things to consider when you approach an accompaniment like Alberti bass. For example, like this one from a Czerny Etude number 17, opus 139. So in order to make it efficient, we have to combine finger movements and wrist movements, namely rotation. So basically what you should avoid of doing is holding the weight of the hand and working with your fingers like that. Because in this position you see that you're constantly being tense. In order to find more comfort in that, you should be able to lean towards each finger first. So feeling enough support in the knuckle bridge, but releasing the wrist and reaching the bottom of the key, reaching the bed of the key. And then releasing the hand and transferring to the next key, to the thumb, and then to the second finger. So that would be the first step, just finding comfort, finding a proper weight usage in your hand. So you don't have to push, you don't have to really push these keys down, but just feel this comfortable sensation of resting on the key when you feel the weight of your hand. And then what is really great, we don't have to use just fingers. We might use rotation, and for that purpose we are going to break this in pairs. So I'm going to play one, that's the first pair, that's the second pair. And the marvelous thing about these figurations is that you can play both notes, two notes, within one movement. So basically you just lean toward the fourth finger, so the weight of your hand is shifted toward the left side of your hand, and then you just turn your wrist and transfer the weight toward the thumb in the same way as if you are walking. So you're just transferring the weight from the left leg to the right leg, and that's basically what happens here. And in order to make it faster, you just transfer the weight faster. So basically that's it. And then another pair. And then, of course, you still have to have some precision in your fingers, and you still have to work with your fingers, but you don't work just with fingers. You don't use just isolated fingers, because that's what causes a lot of tension and makes you exhausted pretty quickly. And also, in this case, you would have kind of robotic sound that in most of cases you don't really want. So this next step would be playing those figures in pairs using rotation and releasing the hand immediately afterwards. Now, because you go to the right, because you rotate your wrist to the right when you approach the thumb, that gives you enough energy to rotate your hand back to the left. So basically, left, right, left, right. So that's basically it. And in order to make it even smoother, when you make it faster, when you want to play it faster, you add one wrist movement, one uniting wrist movement for the whole group of 4 notes. So you're going down on the first sound and up on the last sound. So it's a combination of 2 movements, I would say. Rotation between pairs and one smooth unifying movement for the whole group of 4 notes. If you have some turn like that, of course, it's reasonable to break it first. Release your hand and then lean toward the note, toward the first note of the next group. So release and support on the group. So then you don't really have this break, but still you have the sensation of release at the end of the first group and support at the next group. Then fingering, of course, is very important for Alberti bass. So you have to see what's next in order to use the best fingering. So for example, in this piece, we have a normal C major chord, but then we go down. That's why it's reasonable to start from the fourth finger and then go to the fifth. So 4-2 and then 5-3 and then 4-2 again and going down. But if you would go higher, like this, I would start with the fifth finger. So I would have 5-3 and then 4-2. And then, for example, 5-3, 4-2. So I always try to group them. Another very, very important thing to remember is that if a composer doesn't write the lower voice as a special voice, a separate voice, you don't have to hold it longer than necessary, because one of the most common problems that happens with Alberti bass, with such accompaniment, is that students just hold the lower note, like always. So that's what happened really very, very often, and I really start thinking that this is kind of a bug in our human nature that provokes barely all students make the same mistake. Precious. But that's actually very important, because first of all, it sounds a bit clumsy and it sounds a bit heavy, because that would sound just much more elegant if you would not hold things that are not supposed to be held. But also it provokes a lot of tension, so you get really tense while you're holding that. And of course I understand that people do that just out of stress, out of fright of a failure. But it's very important to remember that this is exactly what makes you fail in most of cases and makes you feel tense. So what is very important is always transferring the weight from a finger to a finger completely. Just giving away all that weight from the fifth finger toward the thumb. If a composer wants you to hold this note, they will obviously write it down. So for example, in the Beethoven Sonata Opus 14 number 2, there is a spot with an accompaniment. It's not exactly Alberti bass, but similar in a way. So we have so as you see in the beginning, we don't have that voice. So we have to release our fifth finger very quickly. And then, when music becomes slightly more intensive and we have a new harmony, Beethoven writes it as a separate voice. So from this point, we have to hold it and perform as a separate voice. And then another learning strategy, when you have to play a lot of Alberti basses and in a quicker tempo, you might separate the first note and then start learning that from the second note. So you play like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. And another type of accompaniment, also very, very common, is when you have a short arpeggio. Many students also struggle a bit with this kind of accompaniment because it's difficult to make it sound smooth. And for that purpose, we also have to learn how to transfer the weight from finger to finger and how to release all fingers that are done. So in this case, like for example, this Etude number 12 in Opus 139 by Karl Czerny. In this case, we have also to transfer the weight properly from a finger to a finger and also use rotation, helping our fingers. And one of the most helpful strategies, learning strategies that I personally know for this kind of accompaniment is learning it from the thumb. So you play like 1, 2, then you release your hand, and on the third, eighth note, you lean toward the thumb and connect it with the next one. And you need to make a circle. So you learn it starting from the thumb, basically. And making sure that you have enough support in the thumb. That's very important. I have no idea why, actually. So that's basically it. So and a bit faster, and then 2 beats at a time. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. But that's very important, this coordination of motion. So basically, you push off the bass and you go higher with your wrist. And on the thumb, you lean properly, going down with your wrist. And connect that using a downside trajectory. And that's a key to success here. So have fun playing piano, and see you next time.